Well, it's wonderful to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into the album, looking forward to getting into your history and music. So thank you so much for taking a minute out.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
we're thrilled. Yeah, thank you.
You bet. So before we get into the album, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this pandemic changed everything for all of us. It rearranged our lives, especially musicians. So my question to you is this: how did you survive that time period as a creative? And how has it influenced your music and the way that you do things today?
Well,
Big question.
yeah,
Let's not have a gigantic answer, but
Right.
I can say that Premik had a recording studio in New York City for 48 years. And when the pandemic hit, it was an unusual time in my life because I had just lost my father, and my mother died in my arms the very first day of the pandemic, which was March 20th, 2020. And
Wow.
on that day, Premik basically held me in his arms and he said, you know what? If New York City is shut down, I'm like, what? Because I had been holding my mother for 8 days and 8 nights. And he said, Margie, if my international tours are canceled, if I can't perform in the city, New York is shut down. He said, let's just, let go of the studio, create one up in Connecticut, and I'll just be full time with you. We were married, during that time. And
a year later,
uh,
2021, September
no,
2021.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little before that. But anyway, we put an addition on our home in Connecticut, and we built a recording studio here. And yeah, the pandemic changed everything, and I think things were kind of slow that first year. But then we had actually Todd Mosby, who was out in Missouri in St. Louis. We were at the Dreamland Recording Studio the summer of 2020, did aerial views that we were both in Premika's
Great
featured
album.
on.
Yeah.
So we did manage to continue, but the international tours were canceled. As you know, I'm also a European citizen, so I didn't want to, I had been living 3 years, 3 months a year in Paris, 9 months here. I didn't want to travel being afraid that being European, I mean, I have a dual citizenship, but I didn't want to be locked out of the United States, not able to come back in. So really, it was very unusual to not be seeing my family in France.
And as for me, I migrated like many New Yorkers did, but I had a good reason because of this wonderful woman who was welcoming me. And since New York City basically became a barren desert, um, artistically speaking, you can almost see tumbleweed going down the streets. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So up we came and started in a sense, a whole new life, and it just grew and grew from there. And I'm just so happy to be here. It's all worked out in a wonderful way, actually.
Yeah.
In a way, the beauty of the pandemic, we've known each other for 23 years, and I was married before. And I think the pandemic really, and then my parents dying, just it was what propelled us into making the decision to get married and 100% join our lives, because he was only living in Connecticut with me half of the week up until 5 years ago. And then at that point, we made that commitment, and now we're collaborators, and it's just exquisite.
It was time to rent that U-Haul truck, pack the Queen studio, and close, and come on up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
We have
yeah.
a
So,
gorgeous home here, so.
so was Oneness-World a reflection of this union, of this time period? What was kind of the creative vision that you had going into this album?
I think she was the initial spearhead of the vision, and fashion designer turned lyricist turned spoken word artist. Um, Basically, she said, "Premik, let's do an album." I said, "Okay, what will it turn into?" And then suddenly this whole amazing vision started to
I just
blossom.
started writing songs after song. I wrote Oneness, I wrote The Weave, I wrote Catwalk, A Stitch in Time, I wrote La Ronde des Saisons, and I wrote The Bells. And it was so, we had funny moments of being in the kitchen together. First, I'm telling Premik, it's time, we've got to do this album together. Songs are coming to me, I'm composing, I'm writing the melodies, I'm writing the lyrics. And when no, actually four of this, there's several of the songs I wrote. We're in the kitchen in the morning having breakfast, and I'm telling him about what I'm writing, and he's looking at me like I'm from Mars. Like when I told him about my fashion song, he didn't know what I was talking about. When I told him about the bells, he again looked at me like I was from Mars. So I had to sing. I had to start notating the music. I had to start sharing the lyrics with him. And after I wrote the first five songs, well, with Oneness, I wrote my spoken word. I told him I wanted the Big Bang Theory depicted. I did the percussion myself at the beginning. And then after that, I'm like, okay, you take over, and then I said to him, you've got to start writing some songs, And then he wrote Joie de Vivre, which I chose the name for. And he wrote Norwegian Dance, which I like to joke around and say, my only role in that song is that I'm part Norwegian. So,
Mm.
but anyway, it was a real gorgeous collaboration. And, I had no idea. I've had a life career in fashion design. I lived and worked in 21 countries, promoting Paris fashion around the world, writing international fashion trend reports. I studied music throughout my life. I studied dance throughout my life. I was a translator. I'm a certified French translator from the Sorbonne in Paris. I worked as a translator at Medium in the music industry. For many years, I traveled the world, attending world music festivals. I was in recording studios in Ireland. I mean, all over the world. So I have a strong music background, but I was never a songwriter before. And it was about 3 years ago that the songs started just like bubbling out of me. Like, where is this coming from? And this is Premik has performed on over 300 albums in his 50-year career. I wrote a children's album 2 years ago called Pathways, which came out last year. I did all the artwork, which is right here. Pathways, a gorgeous, gorgeous album. It's filled with jazz and all different genres. And so that was my first beginning in as a composer and lyricist and writer and spoken word artist. And after Pathways, it was last December, I think it was, I said, Premik, this album, Oneness-World, it is flowing out of me. That's the long
Wonderful.
answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. So did you do the artwork on the album?
Oh, yes,
I
yes.
love it.
This is my artwork.
I love it.
I actually did the artwork inside of the CD. Also, well, I did the planet Earth, which you
Yeah.
saw. Can't really quite see. I did for La Ronde des Saisons. I drew and illustrated a leaf in the shape of a heart,
Yeah.
the veins, because I speak about the veins. And then for the bells, I illustrated this gorgeous bell. I
Yeah.
don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a fashion illustrator as well. So yeah, I did that artwork from, I had a photo of Premik playing the sax. And this myself comes from this photo of us,
Okay.
is how I
Yeah.
did that. And I have the dress form in the background. Now, unfortunately, in small images, you can't see, but on the dress form at the top, this dress form is in my design studio. And at the top, it says like size 6 or size 8, something like that. And I hand illustrated one size fits all because we all fit on the planet Earth. There's room for all of us on this planet. And at the bottom, it's a collapsible form, which means that the shoulders collapse in for easy putting gowns and garments on it. And I wrote collapsible 1984 to create more symbolism in the meaning of the album. That this planet, if we don't protect the planet, it's collapsible.
Mm.
So
Yeah. For sure it is. It's beautiful. So let me ask you this. All of this began with you meeting each other. Talk to me about how you met, the circumstances, and if you had any inclination at that point that it would turn into what it is today.
I would say no inclination at first. Yeah.
yeah,
That,
well,
that, that,
yeah.
that the creative collaboration blossoming to this extent.
Yeah, we met peripherally 23 years ago. One of my best friends is Kristen Hoffman. She's a spiritual singer, and Premik has been performing with her for 23 years. But I was married at that time to someone else and did have 2 children from my first marriage. So according to Kristen, when we met, she felt these little sparkle fireworks going off in Premik, but I kind of, and he said to her, who is she? It took me a while. I went through a divorce. I wanted to be on my own and alone for a while. Premik had never been married before, and he's a famous musician, and you look at his background, and it took me a while to trust. Then we had met again
Of
about
course you shouldn't trust a musician. Everyone knows that. Yeah.
we met again about 10, 12 years ago, and he was like, I'm getting her phone number. When he found out I had a website, and he goes, oh, are you on Facebook? And he started inviting me to shows, and it took a couple more years. It was really more for me to be ready, I think. Isn't that?
Slow and steady.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 It's turned out to be the most beautiful, most magical journey, with this being. It's more than I think either one of us had ever imagined. I never imagined we would be co-creators like this. It's an exquisite journey. We believe in the beauty of life, and our album, Oneness-World, is about joy. Beside Catwalk Put Aside, which I did submit for the Harry Belafonte Best Song for Social Change, because that message has to get out there about the toxicity and the abuse of the fashion industry. I mean, I love fashion. I'm a designer, but the fast fashion, that has to stop. The pollution of our environment caused by the fashion industry has to stop, and the change has to happen now. But if you put that song aside, the album is about pure joy.
Yeah.
It's about our oneness, our interconnectedness. It's about connecting human hearts. It's about there are no differences. And in our ancestry and in universally speaking, we are all eternally in the continuum of life, interconnected before we were here, during this journey, and beyond eternally. So that's, I think, both of our beliefs. Is that true?
Yeah, and the term oneness really typifies the message. Like I say, if your album has a message in one word, even though a lot of it is instrumental, the one word is oneness, oneness of humanity, oneness of all of us.
So the one thing about being co-creators is that you learn something, not only about the process of what you're working through, but you learn about each other. What have you discovered about each other that you didn't realize about each other until you created something like this? What did you learn that was unknown before?
I think the one thing is she already wrote beautiful, beautiful poetry, but I never imagined the poetry would transform into song lyrics that I would merge with in terms of my creative writing, because my background, I do a lot of I'm sort of multi-genre, you would say, jack of all trades, because of being in the studio with everything from new age artists to hardcore fusion, um, full throttle, electric, fusion jazz, and so the merging of my background with her beautiful lyric writing is something that was completely unexpected. So a whole new blossoming took place. For example, the song Oneness had been existing in a seed form, like some written notation I had from a tune I started like in the early 90s, but it never took birth. It was like somewhere back there in an incubator. And suddenly she came up with this concept with these lyrics, and suddenly that piece of a song that was asleep suddenly, blossomed into life and became the opening song of the album.
So what about live shows? What are you doing to promote the album?
Well, a bit, not enough yet. I am wearing so many hats. I work on this album every day, and we've had a couple of outdoor concerts in some cafes and different places around Westchester. We have more or less an album release on November 16th in New York City. We can't have the full band. It's not a big enough space. It's called Pangea in the East Village. And I started corresponding with 54 Below, which is a gorgeous, and they sent me all the paperwork like a month and a half ago and I have not had a chance to get on and just fill out that paperwork and send it to them. So we do need to get more upcoming performances. We're mostly all in the New York area, except for Zach Brock on violin. He's living in Kentucky now. So it's tricky, and he tours with Snarky Puppy.
And they are
So
busy.
they are
Yeah.
busy. They're touring this month. So getting Zach is crucial. He's featured on every song. So there's that. And then Lola Christine is in California. So I also have, and she performs really a lot. So I have to really, but all the rest of us are in the New York area. So, but we do have to get more live shows. And yeah, we do feel pretty hopeful and confident that we will get the Grammy nomination on November 7th. The trick for us is just getting people to listen, but every single person who listens to the album is blown away, like really blown away. So we're getting a lot of support, and it's our dream. The Grammys this year are on my birthday, February 1st, and I feel that's an omen. And I submitted the album on his birthday, August 3rd, and the Grammys are on my birthday, February 1st. So fingers crossed. We are getting a tremendous amount of support. And I think if we get the nomination, live gigs will really open up for us as well.
And also, like with many bands, it's like getting all the kittens in the box at the same time,
Yep.
because these are top players who are always working and going here and there. So to bring them all together is often a challenge, but they love the music, and whenever we play together, it's just sheer magic.
So what was the first live show, jazz or otherwise, that you saw in your life that absolutely blew you away and made you think that would be fun? I would like to do that.
Mm.
Whoa, that's a loaded question.
Well,
Please.
like a quick piece of background is my dad was a trumpet player, big band
Yeah.
arranger.
Yeah.
And so he gave me my start as a little one, but he was very legit at the same time. He said, "Okay, you're going to learn some basics of piano." This was when I was like 7, and then the first time I heard rock and roll on the radio as like a 7 or 8 year old, I said, and I heard this raunchy, like funky saxophone playing. I said, "Dad, that's what I want to do." And then he kind of went, all right, but
You're going
first
to start on
you're going to
clarinet.
start on clarinet, get the more legit instruments happening first, and then you can do your saxophone. But several pivotal points was when I heard two amazing people. When I heard John Coltrane for the first time, it was one of his later albums that were really out there. I think it was called Kula Se Mama, where he was like collaborating with an African singer. And I was almost scared of the music at first, of what is this? And then I got into it more and more. And my dad was a little more musically conservative, so he wasn't quite in that direction.
Yeah.
And then the other eye opener was listening to Indian music, Ravi Shankar for the
Yeah.
first time. And thus was my love of fusion born,
Yeah.
between late Coltrane, Ravi Shankar, and then diving into the Indian world, music, the culture, the spirituality, started doing yoga and meditation. Um, and my dear friend Narda Michael Walden, great drummer, record producer, became the second drummer for Mahavishnu Orchestra. And he introduced me to his spiritual teacher, Sri Chinmoy, and I was completely blown away. So I came on board there and met John McLaughlin, met Carlos Santana, and a whole new musical universe opened up.
For sure. How
Well,
about for
speaking of
you?
Ravi Shankar, I had met him 3 times, and I had met Anushka when she was 16. I had met Ravi 3 times when I was working as a translator in the music industry. So when our lives merged, there were just continual coincidences of people we had worked with separately, and like Will Ackerman. I did a certain number of translation work, more in Europe, but in the New Age realm. I was Celtic New Age and world music. And of course, he's performed on 40 or 50 of Will Ackerman's albums. So lots of coincidences.
And I know you're asking about live music. Of course, as a teenager, mom didn't want me to go to jazz clubs yet.
Yeah.
But when I became a senior, I was already listening to the jazz people like Pharoah Sanders. Of course, sadly, Coltrane had already passed from this earth by the time I even heard him for the first time.
But your dad worked with him, helped to launch his
Yes, there
career.
was an album that still can be found on Apple Music. It's called The Winner's Circle. And my dad, I'm happy to say, was the arranger on that. It was all the downbeat poll winners from
Yeah.
1957.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
young John Coltrane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I started sneaking down into the East Village and going to this club called Slugs,
Yep.
where more like especially friendly to the more avant-garde people like I saw Sun Ra there, Pharoah Sanders, Leon Thomas, so many other greats of that time.
Wow, that's amazing. So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everybody has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that you work with, but you run the show. What is your perception of you, not only as individuals, but as a couple?
Well,
Power couple,
we
There
are
you
a
go.
power couple. Yeah. I think ironically,
creative couple.
yeah, we are, when people started to meet us as a couple, people started referring to us as a power couple. I think that we both. I mean, Premik has toured the world. At 22, he performed at the Royal Albert Hall in England to a sold out show. He's had 14 sold out shows at Carnegie Hall. I mean, you've listened to his music, you've read about his background. I mean, he's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And on my end, I've had an unbelievable career. I worked with Yves Saint Laurent, Givenchy, all the top designers in Paris, right in their offices, sat with them, discussing trends. So between the fashion background and working internationally as a French translator in the music industry and, becoming a songwriter, yeah, I think that we have really become this incredible power couple. We both feel tremendously young. We feel every day is the opportunity to creatively participate in life,
Mm.
and we love creating together. We're on this journey, this creative path. Um, I think you said something about family. Premik comes from a very small family, and I came from a big family, but very sadly, I've really lived through pretty much the total loss of my immediate family. So I've had a lot of grief and tragedy, and I think that that does come out in some ways in my spiritual beliefs of death being rebirth in born into the next. And I really do believe in the beauty of eternal existence and life. And we're both very cosmic. I'm into the stars.
I wear a pyramid hat every day. Yeah.
So one of the reasons I married him is because he makes me laugh.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So let's say you were to come to Kansas City on tour and you were going to put a show on and you had to come up with craft some marketing way of explaining to people what your show is going to be like to fill the seats. What would be your PR pitch?
I would say, hey man, I used to work with Santana. Come on, see me. No, no,
That's it. And
do that.
immediately everybody's coming in.
Right, right, right. Sorry, Carlos won't be there this time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
But it's a big question, and fortunately, like whenever we've done things in this general area, New York City or in Westchester,
all
other
our
areas,
shows are sold out. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
they
People know
all
us
sell
enough
out.
that they
Yeah,
know they're going to expect something fun.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's something that would take a little contemplation
Sure.
is
I get it. I get it.
to get
I,
to
I
get the
like the
market
Santana
right.
angle though. That works.
Well, Whitney Houston, I mean, he wrote wind music for her first two albums. He wrote the sax solo and performed the sax solo on How Will I Know for
Wow.
Whitney Houston. And that the New York Times wrote it up as one of the 40 greatest sax solos of all time. And I think that pitching who wrote the sax solo, who wrote and performed the sax solo for Whitney Houston's How Will I Know?
That's
Premik
it.
Tubbs. And I think that's a huge pitch and launch as to why people should. And actually, ironically, one of my former students was married a year ago yesterday, September 9th. And we went to the wedding. It was, they must have spent 100,000, 200,000 on this wedding. It was on the North Shore of Long Island in a mansion on the water. And she asked Premik to perform How Will I Know? He performed it at the wedding,
Right on.
and everyone just like went crazy. I have a video of it actually. I could maybe send it over your way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that's a big pitch. The Whitney Houston, those were the first two Grammy nominated albums he was on were Whitney and Whitney Houston, which is the name of those two. I think 85 and 86.
Right, but the jazz crowd would gravitate even more toward the other names, such as Carlos,
Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Herbie Hancock,
Yep.
etc.
Yeah.
I mean, Premik's best friends are John McLaughlin, Will Ackerman, Narda Michael Walden, like, I mean, like, and we have a beautiful life together. And on my end, I've introduced him, to so many, Stefan Rembel, who's a gypsy jazz guitarist. I don't know if you know Stefan.
So amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he won the Oscar for Midnight in Paris. He wrote
Yeah.
last 4 music scores for Woody Allen's last 4 films. Stefan wrote, and he's my cosmic brother. We're both from Paris. And I introduced, he performs with Stefan.
I got a good education about Django's music from that guy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, it would be an easy sell. I would love to see you in Kansas City.
We'd love to be there.
Yeah, it would be wonderful.
Organize it and we'll be there and we'll bring our band members.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get the World Cup next year, so there's a lot going on. This is a growing town. So yeah, it's good. It's very good here. It's surprising. I think we get kind of pigeonholed as being kind of Midwest, middle of the country, but there's a lot going on. It's kind of a hip cosmopolitan cultural hub, so it's good. We would love to see you here. But Oneness-World is the new album. If anybody wants to get a copy, I'm sure it's streaming everywhere. Is there any other
all platforms?
If anybody wants to buy a copy,
link in my bio on Instagram.
Okay.
So you'd find me at Margee Minier Tubbs or Margee Twilde, which is the name of our record label, Margetile. That's me on Instagram.
Also, my Facebook page is wide open for all that stuff as well.
Okay.
Russell Tubbs.
Both on Facebook.
Yeah.
We're a little more on Facebook than Instagram. That's revealing our age, I guess. But we're on both.
Okay. I will put links in the show notes. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for taking a minute out.
Great meeting you. Thank you for all the excellent
Jazz
questions.
fans, Joe Domino of Neon Jazz here. Proud to let you know about the triumphant return of the Kansas City Blues and Jazz Festival to Legends Field at the home of the KC Monarchs with a stellar lineup. Grammy-winning Stanley Clarke, Carl Denson's Tiny Universe, jazz master Bill Frisell, and KC luminaries Jackie Myers and Brody Buster. Tickets and more for this electrifying 2-day event is found at monarchsbaseball.com, then click on special events. This October 3rd and 4th, join us as we bring magic and music back to Kansas City.